Welcome to the Westbrook English Channel, everyone. We are so glad you are tuning in today. Now, if you have ever, opened a bag of pre-ground coffee in the morning, taken a really deep breath, and thought, wow, that smells absolutely incredible, well, I actually have some unfortunate news for you today.
Yeah, it is kind of a harsh reality to face before you've even had your first cup of coffee.
Right, because you are literally smelling your coffee's flavor, just leaving the beans forever. Those beautiful, rich aromas are just evaporating right into the air of your kitchen, which means, sadly, they are not going to end up in your morning mug.
Exactly. Chemically speaking, what you are experiencing in that exact moment is the rapid loss of what we call volatile aromatics.
The volatile aromatics?
Yeah, basically the chemical compounds that make your coffee taste like anything more than just, bitter brown water.
Yeah.
They are actively escaping into the room.
And honestly, that realization is exactly why we are doing this deep dive today. I mean, most of us just stumble into the kitchen, right? Our eyes are half closed, and we just treat coffee as this functional delivery system for caffeine.
Right, it's just a tool to wake up.
Exactly. It's just a tool. But treating it that way is kind of a tragedy. It feels a bit like speed reading a really brilliant, beautiful novel just to find out who the killer is on the very last page.
Oh, that is a great way to put it.
I mean, sure, you get the job done, but you completely miss all the poetry and the nuance along the way. So, today, our mission is to take you on a sensory journey. We want to completely transform your morning routine. We are going to explore the environmental footprint of the coffee bean, the chemistry of how you brew it, and even the biology of how you actually taste it.
Yeah, we really want to elevate that daily fix into a genuine multi-sensory experience.
Yeah.
Treating coffee with the same kind of reverence that people usually reserve for fine wine or like craft chocolate.
And to do that, we have to start at the very beginning, the foundation.
Yeah.
Because you can't appreciate the poetry of the drink if the raw materials are flawed, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
The entire experience hinges completely on the bean itself.
Yeah.
And more specifically, the exact environment where that bean grew. The core concept here is something called terroir.
Terroir. Okay, so that is a word you hear thrown around constantly at vineyards when people talk about wine. But translating that to a daily cup of coffee feels, I don't know, a bit abstract.
Yeah, it can be.
What does the environmental footprint actually mean for a coffee bean?
So think of a coffee bean as this incredibly absorbent agricultural sponge. It doesn't just, grow in the dirt. It actually records its environment.
Oh, wow. It records it.
Yeah. The specific soil composition, the altitude of the mountainside, the angle of the sun, how often it rains, even the vegetation growing around it. All of those factors physically alter the cellular structure of the bean while it's still developing inside the coffee cherry.
Okay, so a bean grown on like a steep volcanic mountain in one part of the world is going to have a completely different chemical makeup than a bean grown in a lower, wetter climate somewhere else.
Fundamentally different, like night and day. And to give you a sense of just how dramatic this geographic impact is, we
Yeah.
can look at a few major regional profiles.
Let's do it.
So let's start with Latin American coffees, places like Colombia or Guatemala.
Oh, yeah. Colombian coffee is everywhere.
It is. And the terroir there often produces beans that are incredibly balanced. So when you brew them, you typically uncover these deep, nutty flavors, maybe some caramel sweetness, and really rich chocolatey notes.
That sounds pretty much like what I imagine when I just think of the generic word coffee. It's comforting, kind of like the classic diner profile.
Right. It is very approachable, very familiar. But then, if you cross the globe over to Africa, the terroir shifts entirely, especially in high-altitude regions like Ethiopia and Kenya.
Okay.
The beans grown in that specific dirt under those specific clouds are famously bright and highly acidic.
Wait, acidic. That sounds almost like a warning label. I mean, when people hear acidic, they usually think of heartburn, not a premium beverage.
Yeah, that is a super common misconception. In the coffee world, acidity doesn't mean sour or harsh. It refers to a really vibrant, crisp quality.
Like what?
Think of the snap of a fresh green apple or the brightness of a citrus fruit. These African beans are incredibly complex. They often carry very distinct floral aromas like jasmine or these really bright, sweet flavors of blueberries and strawberries.
Wow. That almost sounds more like a fruit tea than a dark roast coffee.
In a lot of ways, it is very tea-like. And then if you travel to a third region, let's say Indonesia, the environment forces the bean to adapt yet again.
So totally different flavor profile again.
Exactly. The tropical climate and the volcanic soil yield coffees that are typically described as earthy, spicy, sometimes even tobacco-like, with a very heavy, full-bodied presence in your mouth.
It really is wild. I mean, it is the exact same species of plant, but just by moving it to different dirt, you get a light floral berry drink in one place and this earthy, heavy drink in another.
It's amazing.
Which actually brings up a huge dilemma when you're in the coffee aisle at the grocery store. You see bags labeled single origin and others labeled as blends. If terroir is this important, why do blends even exist?
Well, it really comes down to what you want out of your morning. So a single origin coffee is sourced from one specific region, sometimes even just one single farm or estate.
Okay.
The whole goal there is to let the terroir shine through. You are tasting the completely unedited environmental footprint of that exact plot of land.
Oh, it's like a solo artist playing an acoustic set. You hear every single nuance of their voice, for better or worse.
That is a perfect comparison, yes. And a blend, on the other hand, is an orchestra. A roaster takes beans from different regions, maybe a chocolatey Latin American bean to provide a base, and then a little bit of that bright African bean to add a spark of complexity, and they mix them together.
To get the best of both worlds.
Right. Blends are designed for balance and absolute consistency. The roaster wants that bag of coffee to taste exactly the same today as it will 5 years from now, regardless of changing weather patterns on the individual farms.
Okay, I can appreciate a reliable orchestra, but if we are trying to, elevate the experience and discover new flavors, single origin definitely seems like the way to go.
Absolutely.
But here is where I struggle with how most of us actually buy this stuff. Let's say you find a great single origin bean at the grocery store. It's pre-ground, it's sealed in a bag, and the best before date says it is good until next year. If it is sitting on a shelf with a year-long lifespan, aren't we already losing the battle?
Oh, you lost the battle the moment you put pre-ground coffee in your cart.
Wow. Really?
Yes, sourcing a high-quality, geographically distinct bean is vital, of course, but keeping that bean whole until the very last second is totally non-negotiable.
It just feels inherently wrong to trust a year-long expiration date for something agricultural anyway. Like, it is like buying an apple at the supermarket, but someone already sliced it into wedges 3 days ago, and it's just sitting there in plastic.
Right.
Sure, technically it's still an apple, but it is going to be brown, mushy, and that fresh snap is totally gone.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize oxidation. Seriously. When an apple is sliced, the inside flesh is exposed to oxygen, and it begins to degrade immediately. The exact same mechanism happens to coffee. But instead of just turning brown, it loses those volatile aromatics we talked about earlier.
Let's break down volatile aromatics a bit more because, well, it sounds a bit like an explosive compound in a chemistry lab.
It is chemistry, but nothing dangerous, I promise. Those unique flavors we've been discussing, the jasmine, the blueberry, the dark chocolate, the spice, they do not exist as solid matter inside the bean. They're stored as volatile aromatic compounds.
Okay, so what does volatile mean in this context?
Volatile simply means they evaporate very easily at room temperature.
Yeah.
The hard, dense outer shell of a whole roasted coffee bean acts as a natural protective vault. It locks all those fragile compounds safely inside.
Ah, I see. So the coffee grinder is essentially a Hulk cracker. You smash the bean, the vault shatters, and the aromatics are suddenly exposed to the air.
And the clock instantly starts ticking. Coffee begins to drastically lose its volatile aromatics within minutes of being ground.
Minutes, not days?
Minutes. So if you buy pre-ground coffee, the vault was shattered weeks or maybe even months ago in some factory. By the time you open that bag and smell that amazing aroma filling your kitchen, you are just smelling the final ghosts of the flavor leaving the grounds forever.
That is so tragic.
It is. Because when you actually brew it, the hot water has almost nothing complex left to extract. You just get generic, bitter coffee flavor.
So grinding the beans yourself just before you brew them is really the only way to trap those evaporating flavors in the hot water, instead of letting them escape into the kitchen air.
It is honestly the single biggest upgrade you can make to your coffee routine. And it ties directly into how you should read a coffee bag.
Right, the dates.
Yeah. You need to ignore the best before date entirely. That's just a food safety metric. It basically just tells you when the natural oils might go rancid. Instead, you need to look for a roasted on date.
Because even if the bean is whole, the vault isn't perfectly sealed forever, right? It still ages.
Correct. The roasted bean is slightly porous. Over time, it slowly releases carbon dioxide and those precious aromatics. So the ideal window to catch the beans at their absolute peak vibrance is within 2 to 4 weeks of the day they were roasted.
Okay, so let's say I've done everything right so far. I have a bag of whole, freshly roasted beans from a high-altitude farm in Ethiopia, and I am ready to grind them right now. If I just dump those freshly ground beans into my standard automatic drip machine, am I undoing all that hard work?
You might be, actually.
Oh.
This is what we call the alchemy phase. The method you use to extract the flavors from the grounds will dramatically dictate what actually ends up in your mug, because water is a solvent, and it interacts with coffee very differently depending on the physics of the brewing tool you use.
So we need to match the brew to the bean. How do we navigate this? There are so many gadgets out there.
Let's just look at three distinct methods that represent entirely different extraction philosophies: the pour-over, the French press, and espresso.
Okay, let's start with the pour-over, like a Hario V60 or a Chemex, right?
Exactly. This is a percolation method. You slowly pour hot water over a bed of grounds that are sitting inside a paper filter, and gravity just pulls the water down through the coffee.
The paper filter is the key variable there, I imagine.
It changes everything. The paper acts as this incredibly fine sieve. As the water passes through, the paper traps almost all of the natural coffee oils and all the microscopic sediment, which we call fines.
Leaving you with a liquid that is almost translucent. Very clean looking.
Exceptionally clean. And because the heavy oils and sediment are removed, pour-overs highlight absolute clarity. They elevate the acidity and allow those delicate, ethereal, floral, and fruity notes to take center stage without any heavy interference.
Okay, then you have the French press, which seems like the exact opposite philosophy. I mean, you aren't pouring water through anything. You are just dumping the grounds into a glass pitcher, adding hot water, and letting it sit there like a soup.
Yeah, it is an immersion method. The grounds steep freely in the water, and then after a few minutes you push a plunger down, which is fitted with a metal mesh screen.
And a metal mesh is definitely not going to trap microscopic sediment or oils the way paper does.
Not at all. The metal screen simply pushes the large chunks of coffee to the bottom. All of those heavy natural oils and the tiny particles of sediment pass right through the mesh and end up in your final cup.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. This is why a French press produces a coffee with a massive body. It emphasizes texture, creating this bold, rich, almost syrupy mouthfeel.
And finally, espresso, which operates on like a completely different planet of physics. It isn't about gravity or slow steeping, it's about brute force.
Intense pressure. An espresso machine forces a small amount of nearly boiling water through a tightly packed puck of very finely ground coffee. And it does this at roughly 9 bars of pressure.
9 bars, how much is that?
To put that in perspective, that is roughly 3 times the pressure in your car's tires.
All focused on a tiny basket of coffee. That's intense.
And it happens in about 30 seconds. The pressure violently emulsifies the coffee oils, creating that beautiful layer of golden foam on top called crema. It concentrates the entire essence of the bean into a short, incredibly intense shot that really highlights the heavy body and the inherent sweetness of the roast.
Okay, I have a strategic question here, then. We know the tools do different things. Say I have that bright, floral Ethiopian bean we talked about. It's light, maybe a little acidic. If I want to balance it out, shouldn't I brew it in a French press? You know, let the heavy oils and the sediment give it a richer, heavier body so it feels more substantial.
That is actually a very common instinct. People try to fix a coffee by forcing it to be balanced. But the goal here is to respect the raw material. You want to match the tool to the terroir, not fight it.
So putting a delicate bean in a heavy brewer is a mistake.
Think about what makes that Ethiopian bean special in the first place. The jasmine aroma, the crisp blueberry notes. If you steep that in a French press, the heavy oils and the thick, gritty texture from the metal mesh will completely muddy those subtle notes.
It covers them up.
Right. It is like trying to listen to a delicate violin solo while a bass drum is banging right next to your ear. You lose all the clarity.
You want a tool that celebrates what the bean already is.
Precisely. For that Ethiopian bean, a pour-over is the ultimate vehicle. The paper filter removes the heavy oils, acting like a spotlight that allows the natural clarity and bright acidity to shine.
Makes sense.
Conversely, if you take an earthy, spicy, full-bodied Indonesian bean and run it through a paper filter, you strip away its greatest asset. It might taste thin or hollow. But put that Indonesian bean in a French press.
It shines.
Yes. The immersion and the metal mesh play right to its strengths, heavily enhancing its naturally bold, rich character.
Match the tool to the terroir. Let the bean be what it wants to be. I love that. Okay, so we have sourced the fresh beans, we've preserved the volatile aromatics by grinding right before, and we selected the perfect brewing method. The coffee is finally sitting in our mug.
The moment of truth.
This is where the rubber meets the road. How do we physically consume this to ensure we're actually catching all these nuances? Because chugging it from a travel thermos while merging onto the highway is probably not going to work, right?
It absolutely defeats the purpose.
Mhm.
The consumption phase requires a deliberate, multisensory approach. It is a ritual. And surprisingly, the first and most critical step of tasting happens before a single drop of liquid even touches your tongue.
You mean the aroma?
Yes. Cupping your hands around the mug, bringing it close to your face, and inhaling deeply. Chemically and biologically, aroma is actually the dominant force in what we perceive as flavor.
That's fascinating, because I think most people assume the tongue does all the heavy lifting when we eat or drink.
It's funny, the human tongue is actually quite primitive. Your taste buds can really only detect basic broad categories: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and savory. That is it.
Really?
Yeah. But your olfactory system, your sense of smell, can identify tens of thousands of distinct, complex chemical compounds.
So when I say a coffee tastes like blueberries, my tongue is basically just registering sweet and sour, but my nose is doing the complex math to say, hey, that specific sweet and sour combination is a blueberry.
Exactly. You are experiencing it in your brain, but your nose is the thing providing the actual data. That is why inhaling the aroma before you drink really sets the stage.
Yeah.
You want to ask yourself, is the scent floral? Is it nutty? Are there dark fruit notes? Or is it closer to milk chocolate?
So after we establish the aroma, we look at the physical liquid, the
Yeah.
visual assessment.
Right. Observe the color and the clarity. Is it translucent with a reddish hue, which would indicate a clean pour-over of a light roast? Or is it opaque, dark, and thick, showing the heavy extraction of a French press?
The visual gives you a preview of the texture, basically?
Yes, which leads directly to the mouthfeel. And this is something people rarely think about with beverages unless it's, like, carbonated.
Right, but body is crucial.
Pay attention to the physical weight of the liquid as it sits on your palate. Is it light and fleeting, like a green tea? Or is it heavy, syrupy, and coating? Does it leave a lingering texture on your tongue long after you swallow? The mouthfeel dictates how long those flavors actually remain in contact with your receptors.
All right, now for the actual tasting part. There is a specific technique for this, and I have to admit, if you do this at a quiet cafe or, heaven forbid, a local diner, people are going to stare at you.
Oh, they definitely will.
You have to take this violent slurp.
Yes, the professional coffee slurp. It is notoriously noisy.
It sounds like someone loudly gargling soup. Why is it so essential to make a scene?
I promise it isn't about being pretentious. It is purely mechanical. When you sip coffee normally, it just glides over the front of your tongue and goes straight down your throat. You miss most of the sensory real estate in your mouth.
Oh, that makes sense.
But when you vigorously slurp the coffee, you are doing two critical things. First, the sheer velocity of the slurp atomizes the liquid. It forcefully sprays it across your entire palate instantly.
So you are coating every single taste bud at the exact same moment.
Yes, allowing you to simultaneously detect the acidity on the sides of your tongue, the sweetness near the front, and the bitterness toward the back.
Wow.
But the second function of the slurp is even more important. By violently sucking in air with the liquid, you are actually aerating the coffee inside your mouth.
Wait, you are vaporizing those volatile aromatics again?
Exactly. And because the liquid is now at the back of your throat, those vaporized aromatics are pushed up through the back of your nasal cavity.
Oh, I see.
It is a biological process called retronasal olfaction. You are quite literally smelling the coffee from the inside out at the exact same time your tongue registers the basic tastes. That exact combination, internal aroma plus tactile taste, is what unlocks the complete high-definition flavor profile of the bean.
It really is a full sensory immersion. You have smelled the delicate aromas, you've felt the heavy mouthfeel, and you've slurped to combine the sweetness and the acidity. You are experiencing the terroir in real time.
It's a beautiful process.
It is. But for someone trying this tomorrow morning, how do they turn this from a single fun experiment into, a developed skill? Because our palates don't just become expert overnight.
No, they don't. It requires intention and memory. And the most effective tool for developing a sophisticated palate is simply keeping a coffee journal.
A journal.
Yeah. Human sensory memory is notoriously short. You cannot compare today's cup to yesterday's cup if you don't actually have a record of what yesterday tasted like.
I assume it doesn't need to be a fancy leather-bound diary, just a note in your phone.
Oh, keep it simple. Just track the origin. Was it a Colombian or a Kenyan bean? Note the roast level and the brewing method you used, and then just jot down your personal tasting notes.
See, this is the intimidation factor for a lot of people. They look at a bag of specialty coffee, And the roaster's written something like notes of bergamot, raw honey, and toasted macadamia. And then the person drinks it, tastes coffee, and just assumes their palate is broken.
That is the biggest barrier to entry, and it is entirely false. Flavor perception is wildly subjective. It is based completely on your personal memory and biology.
Okay, that's reassuring.
Yeah. If a roaster grew up eating a specific type of caramel, they might identify that note. If you didn't, you won't. What tastes like bright citrus to one person might register as green apple to another.
So there are no wrong answers.
None at all. The journal isn't a test to see if you match the bag. It is a tool to help you recognize patterns in your own perception over time.
You are basically training your brain to stop ignoring the details. I love that. Now, before we wrap up this journey, there is a crucial pro tip we need to discuss, especially for all the latte lovers out there listening.
Yes, if you are going through all the effort to source a single origin bean, grind it fresh, and brew it precisely, you must try tasting it black for the first few sips.
I know that sounds like a punishment to people who view black coffee as battery acid, but it is necessary, right?
It isn't about snobbery, I promise. It is strictly about chemistry. Milk and sugar are delicious, but they act as chemical masks.
Masks?
Yes, the proteins and fats in milk physically bind to the delicate flavor compounds in the coffee, and they mute them. And sucrose, or sugar, overwhelms the natural, subtle sweetness of the roast. You literally cannot detect the intricate jasmine notes of an Ethiopian pour-over if it is drowning in heavy cream and syrup.
Right. So you want to taste the unedited terroir first.
Experience the craftsmanship.
Yeah.
Really taste it. And then, if you want to add milk or sugar, you should enjoy your drink however you like it best.
Stepping back and looking at this whole process, this deep dive is not about becoming an elitist who glares at people putting sugar in their mugs at a local diner.
Not at all.
It is about empowerment. It is about reclaiming 10 minutes of your morning. By taking the time to inhale the aromatics, feel the weight of the liquid, and recognize the environmental history of the bean, you are transforming an automatic, thoughtless habit into a daily moment of genuine discovery. You are slowing down to read the poetry.
It really shifts your entire relationship with the morning. But, understanding terroir also leaves us with a pretty critical, scientifically grounded question.
Oh, what's that?
Well, we have established that the magic of these single-origin beans relies entirely on incredibly specific, fragile microclimates. The exact rainfall, the specific mountain altitude, the perfect temperature swings in places like East Africa or Central America.
Right. The environment acts as the author of the flavor. So, as global climates continue to shift and those delicate weather patterns become increasingly unpredictable, how will those changes permanently rewrite or perhaps entirely erase the unique flavor profiles we are just now learning to appreciate?
Wow, that is a heavy reality to ponder. The flavors we enjoy today might literally not exist in the same way a decade from now. Definitely something to think about tomorrow morning while you're grinding those fresh beans. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive, and goodbye from all of us here at the Westbrook English Channel. Keep exploring.